Good evening, curious minds of the interwebs. I'm Alexa, the resident ooky spooky girly, and today we're diving into places that I'm sure even the most curious amongst us never want to visit. Prisons. I hope you're ready to be scared, because welcome to the top 5 dark secrets of the world's most dangerous prisons. Number 5, Guantanamo Bay. I figured it would make sense to kick today off with the most infamous prison on our list. If I had $1 for every time I've made a reference to punishment being worse or equivalent to something at Guantanamo, I'd be able to afford a home in Toronto by now. Back in April of 2011, WikiLeaks, along with the New York Times, NPR, and The Guardian, and other independent news organizations, began publishing 779 formerly secret documents relating to detainees. This event was referred to as the Guantanamo Bay Files leak, or the Guantanamo Files, or Gitmo Files for short. The documents consist of classified assessments, interviews, and internal memos about detainees, which were written by the Pentagon's Joint Task Force, Guantanamo, headquartered at Guantanamo Bay Naval Base. The documents are marked secret, and NOFORN, which is information that is not to be shared with representatives of other countries. So, what were the deep dark secrets? Oh, no biggie, just more than over 150 innocent Afghanistan and Pakistani folks, including farmers, chefs, and drivers, were held for years without charges. The documents also revealed that some of the prison's youngest and oldest detainees, who include an 89-year-old man and a teen, suffered from fragile mental and physical conditions, to the shock and surprise of nobody. So, what happens there? Well, legally speaking, we don't know a heck of a lot, but let's cover what we do know. Folks in charge over at Gitmo are allowed to use what are officially called enhanced interrogation techniques, which is systematic punishment of detainees in ways that most of us consider unethical. The techniques included forced nudity, painful stress positions, sleep deprivation, hypothermia, and until 2003, waterboarding. Pretty sure they still use it unofficially, so let's break down how they do that and other icky torment stuff. So the prisoner in question would be bound to a declined board with their feet raised and head slightly below the feet. Material is wrapped over their face and water is poured over them, asphyxiating the prisoner. To elaborate more on stress positions, it's where prisoners are forced to stand, handcuffed, and with their feet shackled to a bolt in the floor or wall for more than 40 hours, which creates an intense amount of pressure on the legs, leading first to pain and then muscle failure. There's also abdomen strike, where a hard, open-handed slap is dealt to, the prisoner's abdomen. Doctors consulted over the matter advised against using a punch, which could apparently cause lasting internal damage, because, I'm so glad they decided which of the two is most humane. Granted, we don't want it getting confused with an insult slap, which is an open-handed slap delivered to the prisoner's face to cause pain and fear. Lastly, there's the dreaded shaking. I promise it is actually scary, where an interrogator forcefully grabs the front of the prisoner's shirt and shakes the prisoner. See, the strikes and shaking are just stuff I've experienced by working in public entertainment, so, good to know I can endure that. Number 4, Diyarbakir Prison. So this prison is a prison located in the town of the same name in southeastern Turkey. It was established in 1980 as an E-type prison by the Ministry of Justice. After the September 12th of 1980 Turkish coup d'etat, the facility was transferred to military administration and became a martial law military prison, which if that sounds bad, it was. The period of barbarity nickname given to the establishment refers to this time period, where the prisoners were exposed to horrific acts of systemic torment. Between 1981 to 84, at least 34 prisoners lost their lives. Words like disco and theater were used by guards as substitutes for grim acts of hell, such as administering physical punishment and stripping inmates naked. Among the most common practices were severe and systemic physical torment, pulling of hair, being blindfolded and hosed, solitary confinement, guards' insults, constant and relentless surveillance and intimidation, death threats, sleep, sensory, water, and food deprivation for extensive periods, tormenting the soles of feet, stress positions similar to Gitmo, excessive exercise in extreme temperatures, stretching, squeezing, or crushing of limbs and genitalia, piling of naked prisoners on top of each other, asphyxia and mock execution, electric shocks, and specifically electrodes attached to genitalia, burning with cigarettes, extraction of nails and healthy teeth, sexual humiliation and harm, rectal examinations, forcing prisoners to urinate on each other, and more. It's claimed the dog of the guard captain, which was a German shepherd, was trained to bite the genitalia of inmates after they were stripped naked. More awful reports say that some inmates were forced to sexually harm each other, while there were also threats of sexual violence against family members. Allegedly, when a new prisoner arrived at the prison, Captain Isat met him at the entrance and then would turn to a guard and say, "Prepare him a bath and then take him to the dormitory." Now, this isn't any kind of regular bath or transportation. Almost 20 guards would accompany the prisoner to a welcoming thrashing, and then he would be dragged unconscious to the bath, which was a bathtub full of human feces in which they left the prisoner for a few hours. Yeah, that almost made me hurl. Anybody else? Some members of the prisoners were part of the Kurdistan Workers' Party, PKK, and set themselves on fire inside the prison in protest. Many prisoners died after taking their own lives, also from hunger strikes and torment, while a number of others were physically harmed to death. Control of the prison was returned to the Ministry of Justice on May 8th of 1988, but it's still an awful place. Number 3. 3. Rikers Island. Okie dokie, hands up. Who else mostly knows about this prison because of watching way too many episodes of Law & Order growing up? Just me? Okay. So Rikers Island, aka New York City's main jail complex and the island it sits on, is situated on the East River, between Queens and the Bronx. As one of the largest correctional institutions in the world, the facility comprises 10 jails, which have a total capacity of nearly 17,000 people, which is more folks than if you double the population of my hometown when I was growing up. Pretty wild to think about. It's been referred to as the world's largest penal colony. Fun fact, back in 1884, in order to prepare for the facility's construction, a foundation of garbage, landfill, and street dirt was dumped on the island to expand the grounds. Even after Rikers Island officially opened in 1932, landfill continued to be added to the property until 1943. So because it was built on top of a landfill, it leaks methane as the waste below decomposes over time. Workers and detainees have complained about mysterious smoke plumes and the strong chemical odor that engulfs the site, especially during the summer. To add to mounting issues with air quality, 5 power plants are also situated less than a mile away from the prison in Queens, and some corrections officers even believe that the toxic chemicals may be carcinogenic and filed suit in 2011. And due to this unstable foundation, Rikers Island is especially prone to sinking and shifting. As air pockets rise up from underneath the site, the ground can resettle to fill in the gaps. This contributes to the crumbling infrastructure of the facility, making it vulnerable to flooding and other natural disasters. As the ground shifts, water pipes located underground also crack or move. In addition, the deteriorating of the building themselves have created a fertile ground for the creation of DIY weapons inside the jail. Now, if that isn't bad enough for y'all after the last 2 horrible prisons I talked about, don't worry, I'm getting to it. In a 2009 Daily News article, writers Joe Gold and Rich Shapiro reported on a secret sadistic Rikers Island society called The Program, which was operated by facility guards. According to attorney Antonia Madera, they allowed a group of inmate enforcers, known as the Team, to physically harm and humiliate other prisoners. And sometimes the guards also participated in the program. The hellish scheme remained under wraps until an inmate, Christopher Robinson, who was 18 at the time, was brutally killed. Now, Madera consequently filed a lawsuit against the city in February of 2008, which was settled for over $22,000. Undertraining of corrections officers continues to result in brutal treatment of inmates. It was reported that in 2013 alone, use of excessive force by officers resulted in over 1,000 injuries among an adolescent population of only 791. If you do the math, that's way too close to double the amount of injuries to prisoners for my liking. Negligence by corrections facility officers have led to lawsuits and settlements, including a $5.75 million payout for Bradley Ballard in 2013, who was found in a cell only after 6 days, a $2.75 million payout in July of 2014 for the wrongful death of Ronald Spear, who died of blunt force trauma to the head, and a $2.75 million payout in December of 2014 for Jerome Murdo, who died from being in a mental health unit that was over 100 degrees. In 2021, photos emerged showing dozens of men crammed together for days in temporary holding cells during the global panini. Filthy floors were sullied with rotten food, maggots, urine, feces, and more. People were using plastic sheets for blankets, cardboard boxes for beds, and bags that substituted for toilets. During a 5-day period in mid-September of 2020, shortly before most intake processes were moved to the Eric M. Taylor Center, at least 105 inmates were inside the crowded cells long after they should have been moved, according to records. In just that time period, 1 detainee was inside the intake area for 6.5 days, 22 stayed between 5 and 6 days, and 80 were there between 2 to 5 days, according to records. And this is an area where folks are supposed to be for 24 hours or less. Inside those specific chambers, inmates had very little access to food, which routinely ran out. There was little, if any, access to fresh air, toilets, toilet paper, showers, or medical care, and inmates were routinely denied visits with their attorneys and trips to the courthouse for hearings on their pending cases. Some of the only water inmates were able to drink came from tiny sinks inside the pens, and without cups, detainees used their unwashed hands to scoop up sips, or put their mouth under the faucets. Now, this has since allegedly been resolved, but jeepers. So for decades, the mere mention of Tadmor Prison was enough to send chills down anyone's spine. The notorious facility in the desert of central Syria was where thousands of folks were reported to have been beaten, humiliated, and systemically tormented for opposing the Assad family's rule. The sprawling prison was located a few miles east of Palmyra, a desert oasis famous for its Roman-era colonnades, temples, and artifacts. Located about 250 kilometers northeast of Damascus, Tadmor Prison is part of a walled-off military complex that includes military and civilian units as well as an air base. Former prisoners say it could hold up to 7,000 inmates, so not the biggest place I've talked about today, but still rather large in size. The most well-known incident in this history came in in June of 1980, a day after members of the Muslim Brotherhood staged a failed assassination attempt against Hafez Assad. In retaliation, troops belonging to Assad's brother Rafat reportedly entered the prison and killed up to 1,000 prisoners who belonged to the Brotherhood. Afterwards, the government took bulldozers from a nearby place to dig mass graves in the nearby Owimer Mountain just north of the town. One former prisoner, Abu Den, remembers that when he first entered the prison, he had to walk blindfolded and handcuffed between two rows of men who kicked, pushed, and hit him with clubs and metal rods. His nose was broken and he bled profusely. He still bears the marks on both of his legs, as well as his permanently dislocated right arm. Now, he recalls the warden telling a gathering of detainees shortly after they arrived that you have come to your end, there is no mercy here. God is prohibited from entering the jail. We are God and decide if you live or die. This man was regularly physically tormented and humiliated during the 4 years and 8 months he spent there. The jailers never referred to him with his real name, calling him number 13 instead. He was held in a cell with about 150 inmates who all shared one bathroom. So for food, each prisoner received 3 loaves of bread, an olive, and a teaspoon of marmalade a day, as well as 1 egg that was shared amongst 5 inmates. Prisoners were completely cut off from the outside world. Abu Den recalled that the first time he knew that the Berlin Wall fell and the Soviet Union collapsed was in 1993, which was well after those events actually happened. He broke down when he recalled looking through a keyhole and seeing a soldier urinating the food that he and those in his cell were about to eat one day. He refused to eat, but didn't have the courage to tell the others what he had seen for fear of being killed by his jailers, so instead he told his fellow inmates that he wasn't feeling well. Now, the prison has since been demolished, causing controversy amongst those who wished for it to remain as a museum of history to avoid the risk of the horrors being erased from public memory. Number 1. Bang Kwang Central Prison. It's a men's prison in Nonthaburi Province, Thailand, on the Kao Phraya River about 11 kilometers north of Bangkok. So Bang Kwang is the site of the men's death row and execution chamber of Thailand, and as of 2018, the prison had about 6,000 inmates. All prisoners are required to wear leg irons for the first 3 months of their sentences, and specifically death row inmates are required to have their leg irons permanently welded on. Even those who are sick have to be shackled, and often to another inmate. Allegedly, the inmates are forced to live in cramped cells with no mattresses or toilet facilities. When in their cells, prisoners have only 1 square meter of space instead of the 4 to 6 meters as recommended by the Council of Europe. Prison meals in Thailand consist of unidentifiable vegetables and rotting meat, so enjoy having your stomach turn at the thought. Believe it or not, crime victims in Thailand are often treated as criminals. For instance, a Brit was charged for defending himself after he'd been attacked by a Thai gang. Although the man suffered serious injuries and had his eyeball replaced, he was charged with fighting back. Speaking of fighting, many prisoners, including tourists, are forced to fight for their freedom, which is a practice that dates back to the 18th century when the Burmese people defeated Thailand's old capital, Ayutthaya. And that brings us to the end of our list, and if that wasn't a good enough deterrent to never commit a crime, I don't know what could be. If you enjoyed my ramblings today, could you help us out by giving this video a like, subscribing if you aren't already, hit the bell for more secrets from us here at Top 5 Scary Videos, and I'll see y'all next time, you lovely spooky people.